I believe it's a sense of safety that causes the separation. This sense of safety would be really where to look, because when we feel unsafe, then I think an automatic reaction is to search in ideas of what could be wrong.
When
what
the
could be
safety
missing.
is compromised, you mean?
When it feel that safety is compromised, the natural reaction is to search in ideas of what could be wrong and how could it be fixed.
Right.
And so then that's actual sense of compromised safety is what causes the separation. It causes the separation. Maybe as the primary cause. I'm not so sure. I don't know that. But I mean, that's what I would ask.
I would wonder if they didn't come on together, they were just two sides of the same thing. So the feeling sense of compromised safety is also the feeling sense of separation. Almost as though...
it is the separation, though. It is, because the separation is like moving away from the moment.
Right.
So where do you move? You move into a thought.
Yeah.
So as the thought arises, then the separation is that.
Exactly, yeah.
Is that. Because like we say, okay, when we talk of separation as if it's a thing, or the belief in separation as it's a state, as if it's a state, okay, that person over there is believing in separation. They're in the state of separateness, But that's not true. Because separation comes up with each thought, and between thoughts it goes down again.
Yes.
It's lost. There is no separation.
Mm.
So there is no state. It's just an activity.
Yes.
Of separation, separating.
Yeah.
Or just like moving away from the moment, let's call it. Moving away with the attention.
So this perceived separate one that actually doesn't exist, as you say, because it's only apparent in these little risings of a thought, and then it drops away. But then there's this, what I describe as an animation produced by the thoughts succeeding each other, and the less space there is between each thought, the more complete the animation becomes, and the more complete the illusion is.
It's like how many frames per second, right?
Yeah.
Like, when you used to draw up on a pad of paper, you draw a bunch of pictures and then you flip through them.
Yeah.
And then you just see the thing move around from the different drawings.
Yeah, and you don't see the space.
And then that's the illusion of Richard Miller.
Yeah. See, I can remember when Thomas seemed to be an entity. And there was no witnessing of the space in between the thoughts. Maybe there wasn't much of a space, or maybe it was just completely overlooked. Because thought is always, in its unconscious mode, it's always overlooking the space between the thoughts, isn't it? It doesn't see any value there. So it's like, well, here's a thought, here's the next one, here's the next one, and there's... Have you noticed how the eyes do this? That they go from one thing to another, and what happens in the movement from one place to the other is that it just blurs out.
There's a refocusing, right? But during that refocusing, we don't make an attention on as you go into fuzziness and go back into.
Yeah.
You could do that with a movie, because you can change the focus and then go into another scene.
Right. So I spoke about this in a group one time, and there's a good friend of ours now in Vancouver, a guy who works on brains. And he said, oh, you're speaking about, and he had a word for it. Was it a saccade? I think he called it a saccade. So what happens is, when I focus on this, and then I look over here and focus on that, the brain is kind of eliminating everything that happens in between as too much input. It doesn't need all of that. So to aid the effective functioning, well, I'm looking at this and then I'm looking at that, and I don't need all this other stuff. So it goes out of focus, and it's not going to process it in the same way. It's kind of interesting because when we actually stop and notice what's happening, we can see the saccade happening in the eyes and the senses. We can also see it happening in thought. The saccade between thoughts, that then makes it almost impossible to see between thoughts. It's only Who knows why? Maybe somebody will come along and say, hey, did you notice there's a space between thoughts? Yeah. Huh? Oh, yeah. and that's it. You know, we speak about awakening as though it's some grand thing, and there it is. Just that. That's all it is. You notice the space between thoughts. And in that, and as you say, and maybe it hasn't been understood yet in that witnessing, but the whole illusion of a separate someone has just collapsed, just in seeing that gap between the thoughts. Maybe we haven't even
seen
realized
it really
yet.
clearly, right? No.
Yeah, but something has recognized that Richard Miller is no longer a functioning entity. It's just something that arises and
that pops up every so often.
Yeah, and so often people will say, "There's a problem with my awakening, because I'm still experiencing egoic things happening. I'm still experiencing Richard or Thomas. I'm still. It's great. Sometimes I'm just open, and then sometimes I'm, back in the illusion." It seems to me like, well, what's wrong with that? That's normal. That's what's happening to everyone. Well, near enough everyone. But isn't that entirely different from the old state, I can call it a state, of Thomas being there all the time, and there being a belief that
the
there was
perfect
somebody
ignoring
there all the time.
of the other half of the equation.
Yes, perfect ignoring. That's a good way to put it. I like that.